Welcome to today's episode of the Declutter Hub podcast, your channel for super easy, no-nonsense advice on how to declutter and organise your home. Please welcome your hosts, professional organisers Ingrid Jansen and Leslie Spellman.
Hello and welcome listeners to episode 138 of the Declutter Hub podcast. I'm Ingrid.
I'm Leslie.
If you have clutter and want to sort it out, this is the show for you. Now, in today's episode, Leslie and I are talking about how to keep momentum when you're decluttering. Because Leslie, we get it all the time, don't we? I've started, but now I'm feeling so overwhelmed, or I'm nearly there, but I'm just not finishing it. And it just feels too much to do. And I'm distracted by something else. That's what we hear all the time, isn't it?
Yeah, it's that age-old thing, isn't it, really, about momentum and keeping up, keeping your mojo together, keeping momentum going. We all start in earnest, don't we? But we lose steam, as you say, before the end. And that's a real problem for a lot of people. And so we thought it was worth talking about on our lovely podcast today, didn't we?
I fully agree, because it is so important, because when we're in the middle of a decluttering project and we get stopped in our tracks and we get sidetracked by something else, and then when we want to go back to it, we're like, oh, now I don't remember where I was. It's even more chaotic than it was last time. What has happened? Why is all this other stuff now on top of the stuff that I was sorting? And you just end up in this vicious circle.
You do. And talking of vicious circles, Ingrid, you led me so nicely into what we want to talk about, because we have our own circle, which is not vicious. Am I right?
It's definitely not vicious. It's good. It's good. And we call it the cycle of success.
Yeah. So if you really want to think about how to keep momentum going, you have to have a process, don't you? And we, as Ingrid said, we like to call it our cycle of success. And so in the Declutter Hub, we use this all the time. And this is what we encourage people to do. And it's so interesting, because what we found is that people jump into this cycle of success at lots of random places and don't always start at the beginning and go right through to the end and then start the cycle again and start the cycle again. So it's interesting. So so let me give you an example of that, because that's quite difficult to explain, isn't it? So we are planning to do a big declutter of a room of doom this weekend. So the first thing we think about is to rush out and buy some new storage. But actually what you're going to see on our cycle of success is that storage comes much later in the cycle of success than the beginning. And so it's really important that we do this cycle in the order that we explain it to you now.
Now, if you're thinking to yourself, okay, I would love to see this cycle of success, because I know I'm going to listen to you guys when I'm driving or I'm shopping, and then I can't write it all down. We've actually created a graphic for you to have a look to see what we mean. So if you go to declutterhub.com/cycle, then you can see the graphic of the cycle of success. And we think that will help you with this podcast.
Okay, Ingrid. So we are going to embark on a decluttering project. It might be a big project. It might be a small project. What's the first thing that we need to do?
The first step is planning your project. And it needs to go a bit further than, I'm planning this weekend to tackle my room of doom. That is a great plan, but it's not specific enough. That's a nice kind of end vision of what do I want to achieve here. But the planning is all about, when am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? Do I need help? Do I need to probably break down this project in much smaller chunks? So actually I can do I make a list so I can tick off the different projects that are part of this room by doom project? Planning is all about mapping out what you're going to do.
Yeah, exactly. And, goals come into that as well. What's your goals? There's SMART goals, manageability, thinking about your own energy levels, what's achievable, because we all set out with these big ideas, don't we, of what we want to do all weekend, and we run out of steam. And so we need to think about, what's a sensible amount of time for me to devote to a decluttering project? For some people, that's 15 minutes a day. And for some people, like, you know what, I'm going to spend the whole weekend, 8 hours a day, and that's absolutely fine. And that is very much going to depend on you and lots of external factors. But you really do need to think about that in advance, because that's where a lot of people fall down at the first hurdle, isn't it, Ingrid?
Yes, yes. Planning is definitely a super important step in the cycle of success. Then we move on to start. You need to get started, because it's so easy to think, let me have another cup of tea, or, oh, the paper has gotten in, or, oh, there's something interesting happening on Facebook, or, let me call my friend. I'm not ready yet. I'm feeling a bit tired still. Let me just call somebody and have a nice chin wag with my mate. But then half the day is going to be gone, isn't it, Leslie? The hours just kind of dwindle away.
At the end of the day, we're all here because we struggle a little bit, or have struggled a little bit in the past with decluttering. And so we are all going to be procrastinators, aren't we? Great procrastinators in the decluttering world. And so starting is a thing that procrastination stops us from doing. And so you're absolutely right. At some point, we need to jump in and we need to get started. We need to make our plan and we need to get started. And where to start is going to form part of that plan, isn't it? So, what you don't want to do is go into the most difficult area of your home first. You need to plan and think about it effectively. This is something that we do all the time in the Declutter Hub membership, isn't it, Ingrid, with our roadmap? We do the planning for you, and we plan out what's a sensible order to do things in. And so it's important to think about what's going to be easy for me emotionally, what's going to be achievable for me time-wise, for example. What have I got the cleaning products to clean? It might be something as that, well, I can't really do my garage because I need this, this, and this before I can do that. I want to buy some shelving before I do that, or whatever that might be. So you've really got to think about that project, and do you have everything before you get started? But ultimately, at some point, you need to jump in there and just do it, don't you?
Yes, yes. And I think when you set yourself a date and a time, and think exactly what you said, think about your own energy levels. If you're not very super strong in the morning when you've just woken up, give yourself time to have a nice breakfast, and then say, right, after breakfast at 10 o'clock, that's when I'm going to get started. Or, you know what, I don't mind when I go from the afternoon into the evening, because I'm an evening person. Then go, right, I'm going to take that time off, and don't then kind of go, yeah, I'll go and meet friends, or I'll go and do something else, or I've got this TV program that I want to watch. No, you are in this project and you gave yourself that time. You scheduled that time to get to the next step in your project.
Yeah, and you want it ultimately. You've decided that you want it, so you need to do everything that you can to get there, don't you?
Yeah.
So I think this is a really tough one, actually. It's a really important part of the cycle of success. And in some ways, it is the whole of decluttering almost, isn't it? Which is, we're going to move on to ask. And there are some very simple questions that we can ask ourselves, some basic questions that we can ask ourselves when we start to declutter. Now, there's a little caveat on that, because at the Declutter Hub, we're all about emotions. And so what we don't want to do is oversimplify things, because there's an awful lot that goes into the emotions that hold us back from being able to make decisions. But if we want to put this in a very simple cycle of success, we're going to say, after you've planned, after you've started, you're getting down to the nitty-gritty of decluttering, and you're going to start asking yourself the basic decluttering questions, which are, Ingrid?
Do I need it? Do I use it? Do I love it? And we can think of about 50 other questions that you need to ask yourself. But those three are the ones that kind of are basic and that keep coming back all the time. Do you actually need this item? Do you use it? And do you love it? And when you already say with one of these three, no, then you can go, this is a candidate to declutter from my house.
Yeah, exactly. And so I would love to go into the other 50 questions that you need to ask yourself that are a bigger deep dive. But the whole idea of this podcast is that we give you a framework, a structure to work with your decluttering. It's not to delve into guilt and worry and all those emotions that hold us back. But we know it's not as simple as, do I need it? Do I use it? Do I love it? But if you do ask those three questions, it gives you a really good starting point, doesn't it, Ingrid?
Yeah. And I think a certain honesty comes in here as well. Do I need it? It's very easy to say, yes, well, of course I need it. It's in my house. I bought it. I spent money on it. Of course I need it. But do you actually really need it? Do you actually really love it, or are you just keeping it because somebody else gave it to you? Or is it really that truly special item in your house that you can't do without and that you would actually move with you forever and ever if you could? So although they're basic questions, it really, I think, focuses your mind to have a hard look at all the different items that are in a drawer, in a cupboard, in a room, and kind of keep you moving forward and maybe make it easier for you to decide, does it actually deserve the space here in my house? Does it deserve my time to maintain it, keep it, find a place for it, store it, and put it somewhere so I can actually find it again? If you have a renowned, yes, it is important, then you keep it.
Definitely. And so we are whizzing through our cycle of success. This ask part is going to be quite a meaty part, to be fair, of the cycle of success. It's going to be the biggest probably part of the cycle of success. And sort of interspersed with this a little bit when we're asking ourselves questions, this is the time that we're actually going to start doing the next thing on the cycle of success, which is called sorting. And it's really, really critical that we sort. What we don't want is this big jumbled mess of stuff and we can't remember whether we decided to donate it, to lose it, to keep it, to put it upstairs, to clean it, to do whatever we need to do. We really have to sort so that we've got a good handle on what's going on with our project, haven't we?
Yes, and I think sorting is also definitely helping you categorize. And when you sort, if you've got a cupboard with lots of different kind of things muddled in it, you need to sort it first. So for example, if is this a wardrobe, then you go, right, I'm going to put my trousers together, my t-shirts together, my jackets together, my tops together. That's what we mean with sorting as well. And that's crucial because then you can actually see how many you have of everything. And of course, in the meantime, while you're categorizing and sorting, you can already go, oh, that top is far too small. That can already be decluttered. So you can kind of declutter along the way, but having it into different piles and have it in different categories will really, really help you while you're working on a project. If you're working on a room of doom, a really chaotic room, you might want to create a different space for, that is stuff from overflow from the kitchen. Oh, those are all memory stuff. Oh, those are all my suitcases and backpacks. So that's how you categorize in a room of doom. So you can start to see what lives in here. And then also you make a pile for that can be donated, that needs to be thrown away, or that needs to be recycled. And you start to get different piles of stuff everywhere.
Yeah, you do. And, people say a lot of times it gets worse before it gets better, doesn't it? But you need this to be not to be chaotic. Once everything is going to come out of a cupboard or out of a drawers or whatever, of course, it's going to look more chaotic than it did when everything was put away. So you have to be ready for that. But you need to have some kind of handle on that sorting and make sure that you know this bin bag is for the charity, this bin bag is for the recycling centre, and so on. And so the asking and the sorting are very much going to be sort of flip-flopping between each other, aren't they, Ingrid, at that point? And this is the most difficult part of it. But you need to have complete control over it so you know exactly what you're doing. And the interesting thing is as well, when you're sorting, when you're gathering like with like, there may be things that you decided that you wanted to keep because they passed your basic decluttering questions, let's say. But actually, once you've gathered like with like, you see how many of a certain item you've got. And just looking at the number that you've got may force you or encourage you then to make a different decision, because you think, you know what, I had no idea that I had 27 rolls of sellotape, and perhaps I can get rid of a few of them or donate a few of them. So the asking and the sorting is where you're going to be making those big decisions and where you're going to be making the most progress in terms of the decluttering side of your project.
It is so interesting, Leslie, because this is exactly what you're saying, because the two of them are kind of connected to each other. But this is almost always the moment that people feel really overwhelmed and exactly like, I'm now an hour and a half in, and it's even more chaotic than it's when I started. It's like completely out of control. I'm like losing the battle here. And then it's just very easy to go, it's worse than it was before. I'm going to stop. But this is exactly that tipping point when you have to kind of go, I'm going to go on a little bit longer. I have to hang on now. I have to hang on, because from now on, it can only get better.
Yeah, and also, Ingrid, we talk about this being a cycle. Just to jump back in the cycle, the reason why people get overwhelmed at this stage is because they've not done the planning and they've not got the equipment that they need to do the sorting. So when we're sorting as professional organisers or in our own homes, we have bin bags that are appropriate. We have bin bags that we know exactly where they're going. We have boxes to sort things into. Those are the kind of things that you would do in the planning process. So a lot of people go to a room, start to declutter, and have nowhere to put the stuff. They have no bags to put things into. They have no boxes to put into. That is where the planning is absolutely critical. Make sure that you've got all your cleaning equipment at the planning stage. Make sure you've got your bin bags at the planning stage, so that when you get to that sorting, then you've actually got what you need. And so that's why it's all wrapped up in this big cycle of success.
So let's move on then, Leslie, to the next step in our cycle of success, which is store, isn't it?
Yeah, storage is an interesting one. Again, a mistake, right at the beginning of the podcast, I mentioned that a lot of people jump in at the storage, because that is that's where I want to get to. I want to get to everything being, gathered like with like. I want everything to be together. I want everything to have a place for everything and everything its place. That's where your mind naturally goes to, because that's where you want to be. And you forget about all the things that comes before that. And we naturally jump to the nice, pretty boxes, even to the large plastic boxes in the garage, to the new shelving units. That's where our mind goes, because we believe, a lot of us, that storage is the answer to the decluttering dilemma, don't we? If we get more storage, more boxes to put our stuff into, that is going to fix the problem. And what we're saying is, ignore storage completely until after you've made your decluttering decisions. After those volumes have gone, that's when you start to think about storage, because at that point then you can get appropriate storage. You can get storage for the stuff that you keep in. You know exactly what you're dealing with. You know how much stuff you've kept. You know what type of stuff it is. You know where it's going to fit, how big the box is and what size the boxes are going to be, and what you actually need. You can't make decisions about storage. Sometimes you can, but rarely, before you've embarked on a decluttering project. Storage has to come at this point. Don't jump in early to the storage. There's one thing that you learn through this whole podcast. It's hang back on the storage. How many times have we seen that happen, Ingrid?
Yeah, all the time. And it's so tempting, because when you go to these lovely places, and it can be in IKEA, it can be in Homebase, it can be a Target, it can be a Walmart, it doesn't really matter. And you see all these lovely boxes and you think, that is perfect for my stuff. So it's so tempting to go, I know I don't have the place yet for these beautiful boxes, but this is where I'm going to put it in when I've created the space. But we say, you need to sort like with like, you need to sort, you need to categorize, you need to declutter. Then you need to decide, where is this item going to live in my house, in which room, in which drawer, in which shelf. And then you go, right, do I need, or do I have a good box for it already? Or do I have something that's not up to scratch, and do I replace it for something else? And do I need to buy something new? But we can tell you 90 out of 100 times that there is something around your house that you can use. And I think it was on maybe on the Facebook group this morning, Leslie, I can't remember, but somebody said, I actually had a perfect unit in my garage that I hadn't even realized I could use. And now it just seems to be the perfect unit for exactly in my understairs cupboard. And it was just the perfect example of exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's a bit of a chicken and an egg situation, isn't it? Because we often do have the perfect storage solution, but often it's full of stuff already. Yeah. So we have boxes, but they're full of stuff. And so we need to declutter first so that we empty the box so we can use the box for something else. And so, when you get to decluttering the storage boxes, that's when you've really made progress, isn't it, Ingrid? That's like, yes, finally, all these boxes that I've had before have no longer got stuff in them. And now I can declutter the actual storage. And so what we would say is, if you find storage boxes along the way while you're decluttering, definitely keep hold of them until you've done your whole house, because they probably will come in useful somewhere. And it's useful to have that choice, isn't it? But don't go out and buy new at this stage unless it's absolutely critical. table, and somebody has identified where those gaps are in your house. So storage is kind of emotive, isn't it? Because it's what everybody loves and what everybody wants to do, but it's not what the best thing is to do. Actually, what we need to be focused on is downsizing the amount of stuff that we've got effectively, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, by all means, take a temporary storage solution, take an empty shoe box, convert an empty Amazon box into a temporary storage. It does an iPhone box. They're really great too for containerization in a drawer. Use something you have and then later go out and get that nice, perfect box that you have in mind.
Definitely. So just to recap on how far we've gone around our cycle of success.
Yeah.
We're kind of like, 2/3 of the way through now, aren't we, Ingrid? We're doing very, very well. So we've planned the project. We've got started, really, really important. And people have got, of course, you've got to start the project, but the amount of people who stop at the planning stage and don't even get to the starting. So then we get to the ask. We've got the simple questions that we've put in front of you. We know it's more complicated than that, but actually at some point we have to ask those questions and we have to make some decisions. It's important to sort like with like at this stage. We're thinking about what's going where, what's getting donated, what's getting recycled, what's going to a different room and so on. Then we get to the nice fun bit that everybody loves, which is storage. And then, Ingrid, we move on to the next part of our cycle of success, which is...
So it's move, Leslie. So this is the moment when you're going to put stuff away in the room where you're working. This is where you put it in the drawer, in the cupboard, in your wall cupboard, under your bed storage, whatever you decide, you need to move your items in the right place. Now, there are probably also items that you've decided should no longer be in that room. They need to be moved to other rooms in the house where they're going to be kept. Or you might even have a couple of bin bags for recycling and donating. They're going to go out in your recycling bins or into your car to be dropped off at the recycling center. So this is kind of the next stage, is all about moving things to the place where they need to go.
Yeah, and this is when all of a sudden the kind of the calm is starting to come in our project, isn't it? All of a sudden we're changing that chaos to calm. We've talked about the fact that it gets worse before it gets better. At this stage, once we've decided which storage we're going to use and we've started to move things out of the room or move things and put things away in the room, that's when all of a sudden our decluttering and organizing project is really starting to take shape and look like it's getting to the end point. But we do have a really important part of the cycle of success that we need to do, don't we, Ingrid, before we get to the end, which is...
we need to finish it up. That can be hovering the room where you've been working, wiping some of the sides where you've been doing your sorting and that might have become a little bit dusty. It might be putting away your glass or your jug of water that you've been using while you've been decluttering. It's been a hot day and you've been drinking some water. It's putting away all these last little final bits to make sure that the room looks and feels like it's a finished article, or your cupboard feels like it's a finished article. It's a little bit of that cleaning, that hoovering, closing the curtains, closing the window, whatever you need to do, it's finishing up.
Yeah, really important. When you've done a complete decluttering project from start to finish, obviously we get the finished article. Now, there are going to be many, many decluttering projects that span several weeks or even several months, aren't they, Ingrid? And so part of the finishing part of the process may not be to get to that completely finished product. It may be to put everything away so that when you come back to that project, you know where you got up to. So it's really important as well, if you are not at the end of a project, to actually do some finishing up to remind yourself of where you've been. So this might be labeling things to say this bit has been sorted. If it's a paperwork project, it might be this is the stuff that's going to be recycled or shredded. Those kind of things. Put little notes, stack things up. Put the sorted things at one side of the room and the unsorted things at the other side of the room. Every room and every project is different, but what you need to know that if all of a sudden, even though you are planning to come back to that project tomorrow, life gets in the way and you don't come back to it in 2 weeks' time, you don't forget everything that you did and have to go back to square one. So really, really important that even if your project is not 100% finished, that you need to remind yourself of where you've got up to. Really important.
It might also be, Leslie, because I was thinking, while you were chatting, I was thinking, yes, it might also be writing a list. Because maybe while you've been decluttering and sorting and organizing, you might have thought to yourself, oh, I need to have that drawer repainted, or that thing needs to be fixed that I've seen, or I need to check the battery of my smoke. All these thoughts that go through your head while you're being busy. Have a notepad there to write these things down, so it doesn't kind of, as soon as you close the door or the cupboard door, you think, okay, that's all gone. You can just write it all down, make a little list for yourself so you know exactly where you're at.
So, Ingrid, we have done 7 out of 8 parts of the cycle of success. So what's the final one?
Enjoy. It is enjoy, Leslie. Be proud of yourself. This is the moment where you go, yes, I did it. This is good. And listeners, please, it doesn't have to be a full room. You can give yourself on the back if you've done one drawer, okay? We're not talking whole transformations of whole houses here. If you've done a very, very tricky cupboard or drawer, and you're like, oh, yes, I'm so happy. This is great. I can find everything again. Give yourself a pat on the back and enjoy that moment. Don't just kind of rush up to the next thing. Kind of take that 5 seconds and go, great job. Well done, me. Let's move on. Really be kind to yourself.
I think it's so important, Ingrid, that you say that, because people are like, oh, enjoy, it's obvious and so on. But it's really important, because what that then does is it powers you up and motivates you, gives you that motivation to continue on your decluttering journey. We're all about breaking things down, as you know, into these drawers, cupboards, whatever. Sometimes you might do a bigger project, but in general, break things down. But you need to be motivated and inspired to carry on. And that's where the finishing and the enjoyment comes in. If your room is still chaotic and not completely finished, don't leave it. Make sure you go back to it before you move on to the next project. That's when we pick up different projects, because we never quite get finished. And so there's all these unfinished projects all around the house, and it doesn't fill us with that, you know what, I did that. That room looks amazing. And you need that to motivate you, don't you? So it's a very, very critical part of the cycle, the kind of finishing and enjoyment part of it, which spurs you on to go back to the beginning of the cycle for the next little project and plan the next one.
I think it's so easy to kind of go, oh, look at all the things I haven't done. No, let's talk about what we have done. Look at what I've accomplished today. This is great. Because it's so easy to kind of be negative about ourselves. Oh, I still haven't done this. I haven't done that. Hold on a minute. You've done a great job and you've done that drawer. Fantastic work. I'm going to use all I've learned now to plan my next project. And then you're going to get better and better at it. And you're going to be able to do more and more. So celebrate those wins.
And Ingrid, I do this every single day when I'm working with clients, and I'm sure that you do. We follow the same process every single time, whether we're doing a huge project or whether we're doing one drawer at a time. This is the cycle that we follow, and this is why we have success with our clients. And so think about where you're falling short. Have you been that person that always jumps to storage? Have you been that person that never quite gets finished? Have you been that person that doesn't do the correct planning and you just jump straight in? Really think about where you've fallen short on your decluttering cycle.
Well, that is amazing, Leslie. So I hope our graphic that we've given to you on declutterhub.com/cycle, I hope that's helpful for you, because I think it can help you see our cycle and then kind of fit in all the steps that we've talked about.
So yeah, go and grab that graphic, print it off if you need it, to give yourself that kind of visual cue that quite often a lot of us need to get us through. Really useful. If you want to delve a little bit deeper, we have a lovely webinar available for you called the 3 Key Ingredients for Decluttering Success. And so we tackle the 3 things that we think are the most important things that you need for decluttering success. So if you need that extra bit of oomph, then go and check out our webinar. It's available all the time, so it's not a live webinar, so you can watch it whenever you like at your convenience. And the place that you can find that is declutterhub.com/3, as in the number 3 - ingredients. So declutterhub.com /3-ingredients. And I know Ingrid's going to drop that into the show notes as well. So she'll drop the URL for the Cycle of Success graphic and also the free webinar.
Yes, listeners. So that's it for this episode. We hope you've enjoyed listening to our Cycle of Success and that you're ready to take action. So maybe your next job is now to plan your next project. So let us know in the Facebook group. We've got the Facebook group, the Declutter Hub community with decluttering tips with Leslie and Ingrid. So come and find us and share with us your before and after pictures, or share with us your plan. We would love to know this. Now, if you want to know more about our membership, have a look at members.declutterhub.com to find out more. If you don't want to miss our next podcast, subscribe to the Declutter Hub podcast and it will come into your notifications each Friday. So thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Declutter Hub podcast. Check out declutterhub.com for more inspiration, and don't forget to tune in next week.